was off on all the devices and yeah. So Brian, where the heck am I Wednesday?
I know. Where are you on Wednesday, this
I'm
Wednesday?
home. I'm finally
Finally.
home. I'm so excited. And my cat, I have this docile little cat. She growled at me yesterday. And she's like, "Where the heck have you been, lady?"
Yeah, she's pissed.
So I know, because she can't talk to my deaf cat sitter. My deaf cat sitter doesn't hear her. So yeah,
That's why I have a dog. Like, dogs are never mad. They're always just happy to see you. No matter
I
when you
know.
come. Like, you could be gone for a month. You come home, my dog's like
Yeah.
super pumped.
Yeah. It is weird when you travel for extended times, and I've done this a number of times in my life as a business owner as well. And even though I was working, I was like, yeah, you get used to being away and you forget what everything else is like. Like on this trip, I was in Idaho, Colorado, and then where did I go? Oh, yeah, Nebraska.
Nebraska.
And then back to Colorado. And good morning, Amy. Good morning, Laura. And I couldn't remember Idaho anymore. You know, the stress I was in and the smoke filled air. And, you know, I just pulled out, I unpacked some of my stuff finally. And I was like,
Smells
oh,
like
yeah,
campfire.
it does. And there was one day when I was wearing a mask just because of the COVID thing. And I'm like the only person on my entire trip anywhere until I got back to San Francisco who had a mask on. And then I also had a buff on. So above the mask, I had a buff. And I was like, this reminds me of, you know, olden times. But hi, Will. Hi, Jeff. Hi, Rebecca. Good morning, everybody. So, anyways, what's on my mind? I've been pondering anything bagel seasoning. So,
Love it.
I know. I
Wondering.
bought this in Idaho. I've never tried it. So, I make avocado toast for breakfast every morning. And I successfully did that every single morning of my trip, even though it's hard to get avocados in Nebraska, but I did it. And in Idaho, I found this seasoning, and a friend who had stayed with me in Truckee in June, she's like, you've got to try this seasoning. It's so great, this
Yeah.
anything bagel seasoning. And so yesterday, I got in late. We had a meeting. You know, I had another Zoom, and then there was that whole Saturday Night Live skit last night that was aired nationally. And I decided I was too tired to go grocery shopping. I pulled out, you know, some bagels out of the freezer, and I had butter, and that was good. Um, but that's what I had to have for breakfast this morning. And then I saw the anything bagel seasoning, and I thought, is it okay to put anything bagel seasoning on an anything bagel? What do you think
It's
about that, Brian?
it's aggressive. I think it's but some bagels are under seasoned.
Yeah,
That's for sure. And the bottom of a bagel is typically under seasoned.
right. So maybe flip it
So
over and
you can definitely put it on the bottom half of the bagel, maybe not the top half of the bagel is what I'd say.
yeah.
It might be
And then
overdoing
I
it though.
thought there must be some training analogy in here. So if you and I had to get creative and say, is it okay to put anything bagel seasoning on an anything bagel? What would you think of from a training point of view? By the way, I'm just springing this on him. He saw my note
Man,
when I said
I
I want
would
to talk
I
about
mean,
anything bagel.
I think it comes down to the whole premise of overtraining and more is always better. And
Yeah,
that's not the case, right? Like the problem with over seasoning the bagel, using too much of that, is then you overpower the actual bagel. Now,
right.
with that said, that might be a positive thing depending on where you are in the country.
Yeah.
Like in New York, not a good thing because the bagel itself is really good.
Oh,
And are you
bagels in
putting
art
anything
form in New
on?
York.
Yeah, and then are you putting anything on the bagel as well as far as like lox or whatever else? So, I did see actually a meme about this about making the killer sandwich the other day
Mhm.
on Instagram,
Where
which
we
could have
get
been
all our news.
TikTok, which could have been actually TikTok or whatever. I don't actually know because I just watch it on Instagram. But the guy said the key to making a killer sandwich is not to have one part of the sandwich overpower the other,
Right.
right? That all parts should have an equal thing there, and that way you get the flavor of everything. So I'd say over seasoning with the everything might not go well because
Yeah.
you're overpowering the other things. The same thing with training, right? Is you don't want to do just one thing because it will overpower, and then we don't become a good rounded athlete overall. So yeah, there's always an analogy to training in
So when
this.
I have a client who says, I want to do VO2 max 3 days a week, I should probably say no. That's the anything bagel seasoning on the anything
You're over
bagel
seasoning. You just say
year
you're over
round.
seasoning your bagel. You're just
It
over
was
seasoning.
good. See,
Yeah.
that's where I was going with the bagel. But
Yeah.
hi, Linda
Trader Joe's
and
has a very
Larry.
good everything bagel seasoning. So
Yeah, this
it's a
is
staple in the household.
Borsari. and I think it's an Idaho company. Oh no, it's out of Jamestown, New York, where my grandmother was born.
What's
Um,
really good is in your like eggs. So if you don't, because like
mm,
especially for like New Yorkers, like an egg sandwich on like a toasted everything bagel is like a key to our livelihood.
yeah,
But you get into these habits where you don't want a lot of the bread and stuff like that. So to use a little everything seasoning on like your fried eggs or scrambled eggs and stuff is great because you kind of feel like you're having it without the
yeah,
bagel.
that's true.
Or I
Not
would
the
say have the
bagels are
bagel.
evil, but it came in handy today. I'll just say that.
I love bagels,
I
but
go
I
through
do
phases with
miss.
food, just like with training, right? Where I want to have the same thing all the time. And I went through a bagel phase, so I had some bagels in the freezer. Now I
I
made
could
my
eat a
English
bagel every
muffin
day.
avocado.
I could
Oh
eat a bagel
man,
every day for sure. The problem is in Vermont, they don't do bagels well. It's basically a glorified like hard roll.
yeah.
Like it's just I don't understand why they don't
Well, I
understand
can
how to
tell
make
you
it.
in Nebraska they don't do croissant very well either.
Oh,
It's
here's a
just
quick
like
story.
a glorified bun.
Quick story
Yeah.
about bagels. This is really going off the rails. So I went to school in West Virginia University, right? So freshman year, my mom takes me down. We drop off. We go to a diner just to get breakfast before she takes off. And the woman's like, "Oh, well, we'll have." And she's like, "I'll just have a glass of tea and a bagel."
Oh,
And the waitress is like, "What's a bagel?"
oh, I was thought she was going to ask what's a classic
Yeah.
tea because it's not a
She's
sweet
like,
tea.
"What's a bagel?" And my mom's like,
Yeah.
"It's round, hole in the middle." She's like, "A donut?" And she's like, "No." And I looked at my mother. I go, "You got to effing be kidding me! There's no bagels in this town. I don't know what a
I'm
bagel
leaving.
is." And then Jeff Hostetler, who happened to be quarterback for the New York Giants at one point in time, graduated from West Virginia. That year, he actually ended up opening up a bagel shop in Morgantown, which saved me because my like people were sending me bagels like through
Yeah.
the mail, like ridiculous. But anyway,
I didn't know what they were, although I do recall Lender's Bagels on some Saturday morning TV show. But my sister, who was 11 years older than me, she went to school in Albany, New York, and she came home obsessed with bagels. And so she would bring bagels. That wasn't a thing in the 70s. But,
they're
anyways,
amazing.
and Maggie just joined. Hi, Maggie. She's like, what the heck are you talking about bagels? You'll have to listen to the beginning because there's a good training analogy in there. You'll get that, I think. Maggie is the queen of variety. She's like, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this and this and this and this. So, um, anyways, so that was one thing I was thinking about this morning. And then the other thing, I was listening to a good podcast, driving from Nebraska through Wyoming, where people grow pumpkins on their sidewalks, basically. And there aren't a lot of sidewalks in Wyoming or cell service. I will say that. I was trying to be on a coach's meeting, and it was like, oh, I'm in, I'm out, I'm in, I'm out. And then through Colorado, and I was listening to Consummate Athlete, my friend Molly Herford, and her husband, Peter Glassford. She's a fitness writer. Well, she's a writer, I should say. And she's written a really cool series of books called Strong Girls, Strong Girl Publishing, about different female athletes as role models. And she interviews me frequently for bicycling. And then her husband is a coach and an exercise physiologist. And they have a fun podcast. They usually have some good topics. And they were talking about what do you do after your A race? What do you do after your peak? And I'm there. I'm like, well, man, I just
Mm.
trained 6 months straight for a really big goal. It was very intense. And what should I do this week? My coach was like, you're going to do nothing. And I'm like, I can't do nothing. And then I looked at my work schedule and I was like, yes, I'm going to do nothing because I'm going to be working all week. But then what? And it's interesting in the Peloton world because a lot of folks just train year round and they don't have a goal event. I like having a goal event because it also gives you a target. It gives you a bullseye to go for or not go for. And Jeff, thinking of you too, after Salida, Jeff Heim, for those of you who don't know, but I think everybody is aware, he is racing his goal gravel race this coming weekend. So good luck to you, Jeff.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And anyways, back to the podcast. They used an analogy, and it was actually from another coach. I should find the attribution for this, but it was you can finish your season and you can be at the bus stop or the park at the the bench in the bus stop or the bench in the park, and it's your choice. So, are you waiting to go on to the next thing, or are you just
Hmm.
hanging out? And I think that's really good because one of the mistakes I see often with athletes is, especially racers, they race here in Northern California. We start road racing in January. We run through September and we're done. I mean, it's a really long season, or maybe even 2 seasons, you could call it, if you have a break in the middle. And then they take a month off. And that was encouraged for a long time. Let's take that transition month. And I'm thinking at 59 years old, if I take a month off, I'm basically starting at zero again. And I know I'm not, but a month is a really long time. So I've started to think, okay, what am I going to do here in this transition season now that my goal race is over? And I definitely want to work on some weaknesses, right? So some strength training, big time strength training. That's the one thing that I think
Mhm.
hurt me this year is I haven't been strength training and I just feel weak in general, especially hauling luggage around through an airport with the big bike case and everything. Um, and work on a lot of mobility and work on my weaknesses and definitely still ride bikes. I don't want to not ride bikes, but I won't be riding 20 hours a week anymore. So that means I get to do some other things, like think about bagel analogies and all that.
Yeah.
But what do you think about that, Brian? The
I,
bus stop bench versus the park bench?
I think it's a great. I like when you wrote it in the notes, the bus stop bench versus park bench. I was like, what the heck is she talking about? I'm like, if you can see our show notes, I'm just like anything bagel, bus stop, bench, park. I'm like, I have no idea what's in Lori's head, but we'll
Yeah.
figure it out. Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I don't think that there's a right answer. I don't, I think it's individual to the person. What I do see with a lot of my own personal clients, especially when they have a very big goal ahead of them, something like an Ironman or 100-mile gravel ride, or something that's out of their real comfort zone that they kind of, they spend some of these people are spending 12 months or 10 months or 8 months, 6 months leading up to this thing. There's a depression that sets in
Oh
afterwards.
yeah.
There's a letdown, right? There's like that's not there anymore to kind of push and drive you. I think it's scary for those people to be on the park bench.
It is.
I don't think it's good because I think it's hard to kind of get back going again. You're right. You want to maintain the motivation. So I'm much more of a bus stop bench person myself. Now, what does
Yeah.
that mean? Is I don't have to get on the express bus.
That's
Just get
good.
on the local bus. And what I'd say is one of my keys to ending a season is not to stop my activity, but to change the purpose of my activity. To go from gravel riding and road riding to just mountain biking, maybe. And
Mhm.
not doing those things, but for me, it's getting out of the structured
Yeah.
program. I don't want to follow a plan. I don't want to have to do this workout. I want to do this workout or this
Right.
ride. And I think that's really the thing is it's mental for a lot
Mhm.
of people is you need to take a mental break so you can be mentally prepared to jump back in when the time comes that you're not already burned out. And
Oh
it is
yeah.
a great time to work on your weaknesses. What can
And
I
other
work on
things.
now that I can't work on during the season?
Right.
Right? Your sprinting ability could be it. Your strength could be it. Your
I was thinking
mobility.
more like house cleaning, sell the used bike parts, see my friends. Those are the things you can't do this season. No?
Yeah. Well, it's a great time to
Spend
go for
time
those
with your
rides.
wife or yeah.
Well, it's a
I
great time to
know.
call up the friends that you can't ride with typically because you have a workout and go on those easy rides. Like I call them t-shirt rides, right? Where
I'm
I just
doing
throw a
this
flannel
great ride.
on and just go on a gravel ride with a flannel and
Yeah.
mountain bike shorts and just like chill. Like the moment you put a kit on outside, and this is for
Right.
those bit like once you put a kit on or workout clothes, it's like mentally you want to work out. So
Right.
for me, a lot of these rides are about like dressing in a
Mhm.
relaxed way, so that way I don't feel like I need to go
You're
hard.
gonna love this. There's a group here called the Santa Cruz Graveliers, and it's a young guy in his 30s who works in the bike industry, and he and I are going to collaborate on some gravel events and clinics and stuff together. And he runs 3 rides a month through this group, and the one this coming Saturday is called Anything But Lycra, and they don't let you show up, and it's gravel ride. If they started a brewery, it's like a 2 hour meander. He's like max speed 9 miles an hour, and right? And you go along the bluffs, and they have a theme every month usually, and it's just a bunch of well, mostly dudes, but a couple girls. And I have not been able to go on this ride, and he's like, "Lori, you need to come meet these people. If we're gonna do this stuff, you need to meet everybody." And I'm like, "Okay." And I'm like, "I can do it this time. It doesn't start till 11. I mean, think of how awesome that is." And so I'm like, "Oh, but what do I wear to anything but lycra? I guess I need to find a flannel shirt or go to Goodwill or something." But
Yeah, I think.
super excited
I,
about that.
I do think the hard part is, and you mentioned this, and Jeff actually mentioned it, like cyclocross in there. Like a lot of people will
Oh
just jump
yeah.
into cyclocross and race that through the rest of the fall. But you had mentioned it with like Peloton, and it's like hard. when we don't have events and we are just, and
Yeah.
listen, we're a little bit at fault here. We try to control it with the challenges and the fact that we go from one challenge to the next, to the next, to the next. And, part of sometimes in these challenges where we do pull back intentionally because we need to pull you back
Hmm.
intentionally. It's hard, right? Because we do have to remember to gain fitness, we need to lose fitness,
Right.
right? We do need to take a step back to really take a step forward. If not, what happens is we kind of get in this, what I refer to as perma fit. We're always in this kind
Right.
of fitness
Almost fit. Yeah.
level, right? Like, but it's always just the same. Like, I'm always
Hmm.
just the same. And that's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with somebody just being fit all the time at a base level and that's all they want to do. Go
Except
for it.
you never get the high level if you're always at that kind of
Correct.
perma-fit level. And
Yeah.
so depending on what your goals are, and I think people saw this summer when we challenged them with the short duration intervals. We brought your power up at a short duration, and now we can bring the rest of the power up. And I think that's important. We can't just do the same thing all the time because then we get really good at doing that one thing and
Yes
not
and
very good
no.
at everything else.
Yes and no, right? Again, it comes down to like what is our ultimate goal. And if, and somebody had pointed this out to me, it was like an endurance guy. And he's like, oh, don't confuse this. I'm not healthy. I'm fit,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? There's a difference there. And when we talk about sports and we talk about these events and stuff like that, we're talking about fitness, right? We're talking
Hmm.
about gaining fitness for a performance purpose. Gaining fitness sometimes will sacrifice your health a little bit,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
And this perma fit thing is much more of a constant health thing. So I think
Yeah.
it does boil down to is like what, we're going to talk about motivation a little bit, but what is your motivation and goal? Like, are you
Hmm.
just doing this to be healthy? And if that's the case, then, maybe there isn't this up and down and you are this kind of permanent level, which is totally great and fine and probably healthier than what I do
Right.
to my body,
Right.
right? Or if it's fitness based, then yes, we have to have this up and down and up and down. So yeah, it's always got to boil down to like who that person is and what it
Hmm.
is they're trying to accomplish. There's no right or wrong, and there's no perfect workout or
Right.
anything like that. It's just like be active, like
Yeah.
go
Mindful
for it.
movement. And I think
Yes.
that's what's important, especially in this transition season. So I'm sending off the jelly man. No, I understand, Lavoy. Jeff. I wrote my post race. I spent a long time on the plane yesterday, and we sat on the tarmac for a while. Thank you, United. They blamed it on San Francisco. We blamed it on Denver or whatever. And I sat on my phone of all things, even though I had all the other devices, and just wrote a bunch of notes. And I wrote all my post race notes and reflections. And I was like, okay, what are the things that affected my race the most? Um, Obviously, I hadn't done a lot of group riding this year,
Mm.
fast group riding. My coach didn't prescribe it, and not to criticize her, but I think that was needed in this race. It was a very flat race. It was men and women combined. The men, I made it about 9 miles with the main pack, and then I was like, I don't ride this fast for this long,
Yeah.
so I have to work on that. And then my other two things, of course, were I want more watts, which will work on that, and I want less fat, and strength training will work on that. And I don't say that in an unkind way to myself. It's like, okay, my power to weight ratio isn't what it was when I was racing before, and I can see it in my body and I can feel it. And yes, I'm faster in some ways, but I'm heavier too. And so
But
those are
that
my
might not be a
goals.
detriment in that race, right?
Right.
There's not a lot of climbing in
Right.
that race. So was that really a factor in that
No, but
race?
next year's race is going to be hilly. Nationals is moving to Wisconsin or Minnesota, somewhere right on the border, and
Yeah.
supposedly it's hilly there. So we'll see.
I think the
But
real key there is the reflection, right? Is to sit back
yeah.
and be like, what went well, what didn't go well.
Hmm.
And, this is, it's much harder to invent the wheel than it is to improve the wheel.
Oh yeah.
And, hindsight is always about improving. Your coach is inventing, right? She
Yeah.
created the program for this year out of thin air for the most part and had to predict what this race was going to be like
Right.
and took the best path that she chose for you. Now, hindsight, we could always look back and be like, okay, this is where we came up short, and
Hmm.
that's based on the training that we did. But if I would have performed in those areas, where else would I have fallen short if I didn't do
Right.
the other things I was doing? And you know, again, we're also looking at this as like this really, yes, this was your A race this year, but
Hmm.
this is really your B plus race because your
Because
A race
next
is
year is a
next year.
race. Yes.
And that goes into thinking about this from an Olympic perspective. We just had Olympic
Right.
year. your Olympic champions are not your world champions every year.
Right.
Are you training for the Olympics 4 years from now, or are you training for this year's world championships? And it's different, right? These Olympians are really looking 4 years down the road, where a lot of the world champions are looking 12 months down the road.
Right.
They're just going from year to year. Now, yeah, they may coincide at certain times, but your ultimate goal is a year from now,
Hmm.
not this year. So your coach could be saying, hey, we need to get these things in place.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit you all that great for this course, but next year's course, this is going to fit better.
Yeah.
Or now we can work on those things where you're lacking because we already have this space. And
Right.
that's really like, you know, a coach
And I
coach
had
is tough.
set out process goals, right? So
Yeah.
in my overall goals, I had a couple of them. And one was this was a dress rehearsal for next year. It was to go and experience nationals, which I haven't raced in almost 10 years now at an any discipline. And and then I had a bunch of process goals and I clicked those boxes. I executed my training well. I executed my race plan well, my nutrition, my everything. It was like, okay, I didn't fail in any of these. And I would say,
And you had a great result.
I got a medal. I have my medal right here. I'm like, oh, I
You
should
were
take it to the
on the
office.
podium,
I
100%.
was. For those of you who have no idea, I think everyone knows what we're talking about, but I raced nationals on Sunday. And I'm on what they call the extended podium, though. I was surprised they give us a medal because usually they medal gold, silver,
Top three.
bronze, and
Yeah.
then 4 and 5 they put up on the podium as well, usually. And I won't go in a whole race recap. I wrote that for my coach, but it was a good hard race, and I was able to achieve a bunch of goals. And the podium was just the icing on the cake, so that was awesome. And I get a medal. I probably hang it in my studio. I don't hang my medals here. Was looking at. I have them sitting on a shelf over there, like just in a cluster, and I was like, oh yeah, you got a lot of medals this year, even though it seemed like
Some.
the big races I did this summer, I didn't podium. But early in the year, I got second at Hidden Cappy overall, which is just crazy. And I got third overall in that crazy race near Yosemite. I had forgotten about that one, probably intentionally. And then, yeah, so fifth at nationals. So I'm not unhappy with that. And next year will be, and everybody on the podium, not to make excuses, but everybody on the podium was 2 or more years younger than me. So
Which
yeah, which
plays
is nice
into
too.
next year. We'll
It
get
does.
new age bracket, which
Right. And I will
benefits.
say, those of you who are aging, there's a pretty significant difference in our early 50s and our later 50s. And so I've noticed that. Can we out train it? Yeah, I think we can. So I've got some good goals and I'm motivated and I'm going to have a little fun working this week and then go ride anything but Lycra and transition into the next phase, which is just
Yeah,
keeping some general conditioning and having some fun.
this is the my favorite time of the year, honestly, is like
Yeah.
this fall, late summer, fall time. I will do a little cross racing, but cross is not, it probably should be my sport, but
Yeah.
it just happens way too late in the year for me to really focus on it personally. Um, but like mountain biking is, I
Prime
stopped
season.
racing mountain bikes a really long time ago. Not really long time ago, but I kind of gave up racing mountain bikes a while ago. I still do, but as being my focus because it was no longer fun, right? Everything became training. It was no longer like I can go out for a fun ride. And when training becomes the priority, it kind of takes the fun away from things
Hmm.
sometimes. So I kind of
Yes.
gave that up. And now it's my fun time, right? This is my off season. This is like I get to go
Hmm.
out and just have fun with friends and ride and stop at the top of the hill and not worry about what my heart rate is and stuff like
Right.
that. And I do think you know, we do all this stuff, and this gets into like some of how like people have to kind of change their program around for them because of their work life situations.
Yes.
And
So
I think one
Natalie,
of the
that was a great
things,
question, by the way. Shout out
I
to
think
Natalie Graham Fielding. How do we
one
adjust
of the things
our
we
training?
always have to think about is like, why are we training? And the reason is that we want to be able to enjoy our fitness, right?
Hmm.
And going out and then going for a kayak or a hike or whatever it is, that I always want to be fit enough to go do something. And sometimes our programming doesn't match up to our life because we're trying to enjoy life.
Right.
Right.
There were
So
so many rides I wanted to do on this trip that I couldn't do because my training had me doing like 90 minutes max. Except my one great ride with Jeff. I did have a 4 hour ride that day, but I was like, I want to go ride my bike and have fun and see people I haven't seen and do
that's
the
this
other
time of
things.
year.
Yeah.
That's after your A race, right? That's the fun part. Like
Hmm.
racing is fun and training is fun, but to really go out and enjoy this fitness that you've
Yeah,
gained, right? Like you get to use it and test it on that one day. But
right.
now it's a matter of enjoying that fitness. Like that
Yeah.
fitness is there. Like you're as fit as you've been all year. So it's like
Hmm.
now we can like go out and like just chill and do
Right.
different things and enjoy that. Like to me, that's what this is
Do the routes I haven't
should all
ridden,
be
climb
about.
the hills I haven't climbed, do all the things that, my training has limited me to. So Natalie, we will, I think next week we're going to use your topic, by the way. So how to adjust our training plan. We'll talk about that a bit next week. And then Karen also, these are my shout outs, by the way. Karen Drucker, she had a really good question as well is how do we how do we look at things like intrinsic motivation, things that are driving me as an individual versus extrinsic, which might be your goal event or your training program or your training buddy or that kind of thing. And I actually think those two can go kind of hand in hand. So maybe we'll churn on that a little bit for next week, right, Brian? Will that work?
Yeah, or we can jump into it now if we want for a little bit.
Okay,
But
let me give one more
um
shout out
yeah.
because I have one more on my list, which is Leah Bulow. I was on Facebook a bit the other day, and I noticed on one of the daily posts, Leah went through and gave um, kudos and comments to every single post there. And I thought, well, maybe she's in the grocery line or she's at home sick or whatever. And I just thought it made me think, by the way, of a comment I heard from Matt the first year I was working for him, so 4 years ago. And he was talking in a class about goals, and one of his individual goals as a human was to give more kudos than he gets, meaning he wants to acknowledge others around him. He wants to hop on Strava and say, good job, good job. And that was his goal. And I started looking, Strava will tell you over the course of the year how many
Mhm.
followers you have and how many people you follow, how many kudos you get and how many you give. And I'm like, man, my ratio is way off. I need to be better at that. And so that's influenced me the last few years of let me acknowledge the others around me. Because I think when we bring other people up, it brings us up too. So yeah,
100%, right? And
yeah,
that what is a kudo and what is a like, what is a high five? These are
yeah,
all extrinsic motivation, right? These are the things that motivate us a little bit too. Like when you do get kudos, it's important, right? Because part of, I think part of us, like I'm surrounded by a community of people that understand what it is I do from a fitness perspective. My wife
right.
is an athlete. Most of my friends ride bikes or run or do something like that. And listen, this is crazy. Like the crap that we do and the hours that we do, it's not normal. And it sounds
Right.
normal because we're all in our echo chamber talking to each other. But there's a lot of people out there, especially in our challenges, that don't live in a household necessarily that is, it's not that they're unsupportive, but they're not supportive in the way in the community like that we might be surrounded by.
Right.
Like I ask my kids every day, every Monday, I ask my kids, what 3 days are you working out this week? Like my kids understand that fitness is an important thing in life in general, right? So they're being supported by me and encouraged by me to go work out. They can do whatever they want, but it has to be
Hmm.
moving your body. It has to be intentional. But a lot of people don't have that in their family.
Right.
And then when you're
We
like,
certainly
oh,
didn't.
I'm going to go jump on the Peloton bike for 45 minutes, you know, your family members might feel as that that's an inconvenience to them, right? Or you
Hmm.
feel it's an inconvenience to them because you might have to start getting dinner ready or go shopping or drop a kid off someplace, right? So I think these kudos and the likes and the high fives is a great way to help motivate somebody who might be in a situation like that. They
Oh,
need
yeah.
this community to encourage them and to champion them for what they have done. And
Yeah.
I think it's super important. And
It's
honestly, I should do
commitment.
it more. Yeah, I should be doing it more than I am.
I know. Get on
Um,
Facebook, Brian. Come on. Come play on
I do. I
Facebook.
get on Facebook and I go onto the charts and I always hit the likes. Like I
Yeah,
go
I know.
through and I nail those.
Yeah.
I wish I could read through all of them, but I don't
I do
because I'm
read most of
horrible
them.
at social
I
media because
know.
I just try not to be on social media that
I
much.
know.
But I'm making a hard effort, a hard
Yeah.
push with this group, right?
Back to
Trying.
your point, though, of, taking time away from family in particular or work or whatever. And I know clients who they will put their workout in their calendar, like PTA meeting,
Hmm. Oh, for
chiropractor,
sure.
therapist,
Yeah.
but it's really their workout. I always, with my bike fit clients, especially the new moms and the moms of younger children, I always try to emphasize to them not only do their kids see them working out, which I think is great, but they see them making time for themselves. They see them as
Hmm.
human beings. It's like, okay, I'm a human. I'm not just mom. And it's important for me to take care of myself too, right? Put the oxygen mask on yourself so you can help other people. And I think that's a really important aspect of life. We can't take care of other people if we're not mentally healthy, physically healthy. We need to take care of ourselves, and our workouts are part of that. So I
a
think
hundred
Jeff left,
percent.
but Jeff, good luck. We're all sending you kudos and high fives and all the things. So we'll
And
be
uh,
wishing
I
you
do. I
well.
think that's so important is taking that time. And I've seen it with my kids. My kids are 16 and 14,
Yeah.
and they grew up doing a lot of activities, triathlons and stuff like that. And they don't ride bikes anymore, right? They're at that age where it's not cool, or I can't convince them to go for a ride.
Yeah.
They will if I really ask them to go for a mountain bike ride or something. But what I do know is that my wife and I show them what a healthy lifestyle is.
Right.
And I do know that at some point in time in their life, whether it's college or post college or during their career, they're going to get back on a bike, or they're going to get out running again, and they're going to get out doing some sort of life fitness, because they just understand it's part of life and it should fit into your life. And
Hmm.
one of the things we've always tried is we always say to ourselves is like, would I want my daughter to make this choice? Right? Would I want my daughter to sacrifice her time for her husband, or sacrifice her time to, do something with the kids, that could have waited or been pushed or something, like, no, I want them to be taken care of, and I want them to take care of themselves. So if I don't show that myself, how can I expect them to
Right.
show that later in their life? So me making the selfish choice for myself right now is really about them giving them the ability to make the selfish choice for them later in life. So it's
Hmm.
not really selfish. I'm really doing it for them,
Yeah.
right? And it's tough, it's hard, but it's a must. It's a
Well,
must
and
for
I
me.
think to kind of conclude this, I would say I think it's really important for all of us to realize that we're role models for those around us, our peers, our superiors, our family, our friends. And maybe that's the important part of social media. And maybe that's why being part of a Peloton community is different than being part of other communities on social media. We are encouraging each other and we're showing each other that we can do hard things. Linda is constantly out there trying to do longer, harder rides, training for an event, and everybody's cheering her on. Or, well, Larry does these super long rides too. Maggie posts all her workouts, and at first you think, why is this person posting all this stuff? And then I realized she's showing what's possible, and it's a
Mhm.
really positive thing. Jeff has been sharing his journey to his race, and so I think it's really good for us to acknowledge our own accomplishments, but also just to show other people what they may be capable of too. So I think those are all really good thoughts on all that, right? Being a good role
Yes,
model. So yeah.
social media can be a positive thing.
Oh man. So thank you, Leah Bulow, for giving us a little something to think about by being such a good cheerleader this weekend. Um, did you want to talk about adjusting a training plan? And I think um, I actually think this is a good one because we've had a few people who adjust their training plan and they try to pile it all in, or they miss a week and then they try to make it all up. And it's like,
Mhm.
I know we've talked about this before, but when we think about how to adjust, we have to think about what were the workouts. We also had a situation where somebody did a makeup workout and didn't realize what the class was and ended up doing two really intense rides in a row, which just blew them. So how do you approach changing someone's training if they, for example, have to take a week off?
So my general rule is we can't make up for lost time.
Right.
I can't make up for what I didn't do last week or yesterday or the day before. I can only do what I can do today and tomorrow. Um, First off, if the workout is longer than you have time for, you need to modify the workout, right? Either find another 45-minute class if it was supposed to be 60, find something that's in
Hmm.
a similar structure if possible. If not, if you're doing that class, my general recommendation is to cut out an interval,
Right.
right? Don't cut out the warm up, don't cut out the cool down, cut out something in the middle, like one of the actual interval blocks to fit your time the best. Fast forward through would be that. If I have to cut down my days, right, like my work schedule or my travel schedule doesn't match up to what we have planned, the key workouts are always the ones I want to get in, right? That Tuesday, that Thursday, that Saturday.
But
They don't
not
have to
in
be on
in
those
a row.
days,
Yeah.
not in a row. And Yeah, I always want a day in between key workouts, right? Because the idea is whatever I do on Monday should not affect my Tuesday workout.
Right.
My Tuesday workout, because it's key, can affect my Wednesday workout. So if I'm tired going to my Wednesday ride, who cares? Doesn't matter. It's a nice recovery ride anyway,
And
right?
that's
And the
why we
same
do zone
idea.
2.
Exactly. And then that means I'm ready to go and push hard again on Thursday.
Mhm.
So yeah, if you have to move your days around, if I can get my 3 keys in, that's my first
Yeah.
priority. Think of it as a to-do list, not a schedule. And then I
Right.
want a day in between those. If that's not possible, if I can't have a day in between those, I can only do Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, something like that. Then I'm going to base it on time. Tuesday it would be my key ride. Wednesday would be again an easy recovery ride. That's probably on the schedule. Thursday, then I have a choice. Do I do my Thursday ride or my Saturday? Well, Thursday ride's probably 45 minutes or an hour. Saturday's probably
Mhm.
an hour plus. What do you have time for? Which one?
Right.
Right? If you have the time to do the long one, do the long one. Go for it. Get that in there. Get that endurance one in there. Right. So it really, there is a thought process to it, but what I can say is as long as you work out, it's all going to work out.
Yeah.
There's no
I was
bad
panicking.
workout.
Actually, here's another from my trip. I missed 4 days of training. And actually there were 4 days of racing, and that was a big deal, and I was like, "Oh, we planned this very carefully to do these 2 races week to week, back to
Yeah.
back." And I was like, "Oh, this is really bad." And then I realized, okay, first of all, I pivoted and I got out of there. And yeah, the first ride was rough. It was with Jeff actually, and he was dragging me around because I was very stale from being off for 4 days, and it was just fine, right? So there's no one day that's gonna make or break your
No.
long-term fitness, so
Well,
especially when you've been riding as long as we have.
I always say is like the athlete thinks by days, coaches
Mhm.
think by weeks, right? So you
Yeah.
miss a day, you're like, "Oh my god, I missed a day." You
Yeah.
miss 2 days, you're like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna start to lose fitness. This is crazy."
Right.
Right? The coach was like, "Oh, you missed a week? Okay, great. Like,
Cool, you're gonna be fresh.
let's hop
Maybe.
right back into it again."
Yeah.
You missed 2 weeks, we're like, "All right, maybe we got to pull back a little bit and like let's just ease back into this a little bit."
Yeah.
I'm not really concerned until you're starting to miss like 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Right.
Now I'm concerned that fitness is going to start to be lost if you're training for an event. Like if you and you probably said it to me. I probably said it. I'm like, it's 4 days. Like what? Like
I know.
what does it matter? Like you're
I
not
know.
losing it. You're like thinking about the recovery you're gaining, not the fitness you're possibly
Right.
losing.
And it
Right?
was
You're like,
interesting because when I got to Nebraska and started doing my workouts, and they were all short, but they were all pretty intense, as a taper will be. Well, not all of them. One of them was really easy, and I was like, "Oh yeah, got the power. This feels good." Nothing felt fatiguing. Nothing felt bad. It was just awesome. So
yeah, it was the
yeah. So
sharpness you lose. You lose the sharpness in those 4 days. You're
well, and
like
I
still heavy.
wondered,
That's it.
did I lose some endurance because we were pulling me into a taper and I had a really long race on the calendar that I didn't race the week before.
Mm.
So that may have saved me some fatigue. But, when I got to 100K in my race, the wheels kind of fell off. And I realized looking at the power files, it really was more about I went way
Too
too
hard,
hard
too
for too
early.
long.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was also our goal. She was like, "You gotta go. You gotta stay with this pack. You've got to stay on wheels. You've got to do everything you can. Make that your goal." And I was like, "Okay, I can do that." But yeah, but the last 25 miles, thank God I had pre-ridden the course because I knew it was mostly downhill and flat, and some of it was technical, which is my forte. And I was like, "Oh, this is bad." It got really bad. And I also, the other thing was, I think I had way too much electrolyte and not enough water. And maybe that was mental or, just taste fatigue or whatever. But I was like craving water so bad. And there was nowhere until, near the very end where I actually got water. But yeah, you can see my power file. It also went up to over 100 at one point, and that didn't help. It raised through the course of the day. And so that last 2-ish hours, hour and a half of the race, heart rate went way up, power went way down. I was like, I'm barely pedaling at this point, but whatever, I'm gonna finish. So, anyways,
We should talk about that. That's that efficiency number that people get on Training
yeah,
Peaks, that EF number, which is that power to heart rate
heart
ratio
rate
from the
ratio.
first half of the ride compared to the second half of the ride,
Yeah,
and wanting to see that under that kind of 6% number, right? And
right.
then I would imagine you probably see a much higher percentage for
I
you
think
if the
it was,
wheels are coming off the truck.
yeah, I was like, I don't recall, but I think at one point it was like 15. I was like, oh yeah, that was really bad. But it
Yeah.
was also another interesting thing is my heart rate recently hasn't been going up really high, even with high intensity, because I haven't done these long sustained intense workouts. And I was like, oh yeah, that also is going to affect everything. So, anyways,
Yeah.
adjusting training plan, and I think that's very good advice. As I reel it back in, is don't think about what has already passed. You will have more key workouts. Just move forward. And that's what I usually tell people. We may do, if you've been off long enough, we may do what I call a prime the pump workout, meaning I may do something a little almost like a pre-race opener just to get you back into training and not just jump right in. And we may do that first, or we may ease in depending on the client doing something easier. But yeah, and I think we talked a little bit about motivation. Karen Drucker's question was, how do we balance intrinsic versus extrinsic? I think intrinsic is definitely something we're born with. Some people just love to have goals and love to be motivated, and they're the people that get their job done and get A plus in school, and that's great. I'm not one of them. I I need goals, I need deadlines, I need all the things to help keep me motivated. But I think when it comes to fitness, one of the things that really I turned a corner with was when you see a result, and I don't mean a race result, I mean a physical or a mental result of fitness, of having a fit lifestyle, a healthy lifestyle, then it's a lot easier to motivate yourself, I think. Once you build this rhythm, this pattern of working out, and you're like, wow, I can do the things, or I can look this way, or I can um, be in an event, I can go out and run without really having to train for it. And that's motivating to me. It's like I always want to keep enough fitness to be able to do the fun things. And actually, Matt commented on that one day. If you follow Matt on social media, he jumps into a lot of things without any training for them. He'll go hang out with his nieces and nephews and ride the wobble board, and he'll jump on a trampoline and stuff like that. And he had said, I always want to maintain the right level of fitness so I can do the fun things whenever I want to. I don't want to have to think about not doing something because I'm not fit enough, going on the hike or going skiing or whatever. So, yeah. Um, what do you think about motivation?
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on all of it. I think people are intrinsic or extrinsic kind of, I think it's ingrained. And I think it's from our childhood, like whatever motivated you. Was it, you getting the A pluses and being, the best student, or was it
Hmm.
getting the kudos from your parents or your teachers and stuff of that nature,
Or
right?
was it just gaining knowledge, right?
Yeah, I was
Those
too
are
busy
three
getting
different types of
kudos
motivation.
for being the wisecracking kid in class, right? So that's why I went to the wisecracking kid in class. I blame them, but I look at motivation in a sports perspective or a fitness perspective. I think we get confused with motivation, right? I think people are expecting to be motivated when they
Right.
start something, and that's not the way it works, unfortunately. Unfortunately, we make a decision to do something. I'm going to do this challenge. I'm going to start riding. I'm going to do this race. And then you have to have action, right? I'm going to now work out. I'm going to,
Hmm.
like, I'm not motivated in the morning to go for a bike ride. I've made the decision to go for a bike ride.
Right.
Motivation comes after. Motivation comes along with the gains and success that you have. So as we're more successful in attaining these actions, our motivation then grows. Right.
Hmm.
Think of me and Duolingo. Like I get to a 14-day streak. I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I'm logging in for 5 minutes. Like,
Right.
oh my
Go
God,
dual.
it's 11:55. I'm like, oh man, I gotta like I wake up in the middle of the night just to get my streak button, right?
Oh
Or your
yeah, those
blue
blue
dot on the
dots.
Peloton, right? Same thing, right? So it's that's motivation, but it doesn't happen until kind of you have some success there. So I think motivation is a really tough thing, and I don't care how somebody's motivated. If it's about posting and getting likes on social media, or if it's internal, getting a KOM or just beating your buddy on something, go for it, man. Like whatever
Hmm.
motivates you. Don't be ashamed of it and don't shy away from it. Like
Right.
understand it,
One
but
of the
understand motivation is not the driver. The
one of the
driver is
quotes I
your
really
decision.
like is when motivation fails, discipline prevails. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
and that's
embroider that on a pillowcase. But it's true, right? So when I don't want to do the thing for whatever reason, like Maggie said, I calendar it out. So do I. or I have an event, or I have whatever, and it keeps me going. And every once in a while, I have to give in to the lack of motivation and say, today is not the day. And usually that's your body telling you something, I think. It's saying, you
Yeah.
do need the day off. You've been doing too much, or something else in your life created this stress and fatigue that's now affecting your ability to be
I'm more motivated
do
by
your
fear.
workout.
I'm more motivated by fear than I am anything else. Like
Fear
I'm
of getting
scared.
old, or fear of getting
Fear of the
dropped,
event.
or yeah,
Yeah. Am I going to get dropped? Can I attain this goal? Can I get to
yeah,
this distance? Can I ride that far? Can I ride that fast? Like
yeah.
it's more about fear, which is, I guess, extrinsic, right? Like, because someone's going to judge me because I failed. Um,
Or it's I mean, it could be
it
intrinsic as
is
well.
because, yes.
It's interesting. There's an event here called AIDS Life Cycle. It's a 7-day fundraising ride from San Francisco to Los Angeles. It's very popular. They have a couple thousand people, 3,000 people that do it every year. And the first year, everybody does the event because people do it year after year. Everybody trains really, really, really well. They're afraid that they can't do it because they've never done
Mhm.
anything like that before. And the second year, people are like, I did it. It'll be a piece of cake. And then they don't train enough and they get injured, or they don't have fun, or,
Totally.
they sag on days and things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that
And
was easy. Yeah, it was easy because you
right,
trained for it. Right? Like
exactly.
yeah, it
And it's
happens
like,
in
you got to
Ironman.
train again.
Happens in Ironman and marathons all the time, right? Everyone's like, "Oh,
Yeah,
my second one's going to be my faster one," and it's not because
right.
you realize, like you did so well in the first one, the second one you're just like, "Oh, yeah." You kind of cut corners here and there, and you kind of
Yeah,
rest on the fact that you've already attained this, and you don't perform as well usually that
yeah,
sophomore year. And I have that's why I had to stop doing Ironmans because honestly, they just didn't scare me anymore. I was like, I was showing up untrained and still banging through it.
yeah,
Not enjoying it, but getting through it. So I had to move on to something stupid. You know, so
yeah.
fear for me is really that driver, and I kind of enjoy not succeeding. I kind of enjoy a DNF as much as we hate them. Not attaining your goal is a good thing sometimes, right? It just
Right.
kind of drives us to go a little bit more and more and more, and to
Yeah,
realize like my training isn't good enough. I need
right.
to get more time. And you know, I failed at a 100-mile run here in Vermont years ago, and my oldest daughter said to me like at the race, she's like, "Don't worry, Dad, you'll come back next year and you'll finish it." And I said to her, I was like, "No, I will not." And she's like, "What do
Oh,
you mean?" I was like, "This race course beat me." I'm like, I
yeah.
gave my best, and the course won, I lost. And I go, for me to win, I would have to dedicate more time in a
Mhm.
very specific way of getting out to the mountains. I was in New York City at the time, getting out to the mountains and running and hiking more and things like that. And I'm like, I'm not willing to make that sacrifice
Right.
on the weekends and not be home with my kids at that age that they were. Um, so like that failure was a great failure, and it was also a great
Mhm.
lesson. And it was, again, being reflective, sitting and like, what do I need to accomplish this? I can't attain that right now,
Yeah.
right? It's still undone, still haven't done it. Maybe, I don't know, I turned 50 in a couple years. Maybe I'll do it when I'm 50.
I know people have big goals with zeros. Larry, I saw your question, by the way, about the
So
Peloton versus
like,
the outdoor rides,
yeah.
and we're going to run out of time. I have to go to my bike fit studio today, which means I have to be done. And so I'm going to let Brian address that on Facebook. Brian, you'll address that on Facebook,
Yeah, I'll address it right now real quick too if you want
right?
to hop off.
You're never quick. But uh, go,
Yeah, listen,
go
the
ahead.
bottom line is that they're very similar in purpose of what we're trying to accomplish. What they're not similar is in structure, right?
Yeah.
As I get to create my workout how I want to create it. What percentages do I want to be at? What cadences do I want to be at? What time frames do I want to be at? Lori does not have that luxury when she's picking Peloton classes, right?
Yeah.
So when we're picking the Peloton classes, we're kind of picking a class that's close enough to what it is we would try to create ourselves, but we're also limited in what information we have that Peloton class gives us as far as what the
Hmm.
cadence is or what the actual power output is and stuff like that. Domestique, which is, you guys will hear more about it, is kind of helping us with that a little bit about understanding the power a little bit more and what the structure of the class is. So it's
Hmm.
really hard to kind of compare them. In the sprint one, Larry, what I was able to do was to see the classes that Lori picked. And I was able to modify my workouts to match
Yeah.
them a little bit more because it was a little bit more straightforward with 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, things like that. Where this, when we're getting to threshold and tempo, it's really hard to do that. So we thought it was best for me to just create the programs how I would create them for my own clients, and then using the best that we can through Peloton.
Yeah. And so most of what we have is interchangeable if you need to be indoors or outdoors, and you can also take the timers and use them indoors on your Peloton. But yeah, as Brian said, I'm limited because I have content created by someone else. It may not be exactly what I would program. Well, we know it wouldn't be exactly what I would program if I were coaching you, but I think it gives us a good variety for the Peloton world.
Yes.
And every once in a while, there's a class that's like, oh, that wasn't exactly what we thought it was going to be. But in general, I think it's a really solid program. And it's really challenging to create a program based on other people's content. So
It really is.
I've
It
never done
really
that
is.
before. And this has been a very interesting learning process. And I do some of my private clients also use the Peloton. And so it's really made me examine the classes a lot more. What is the intention of the class? And I think that's the
Yeah.
key. So,
Mine as well. I have a couple clients where I have to do the Peloton selecting the classes, and it's hard. It takes
yeah.
me a lot more time to
And
select
I
the
can't
class than
sit
it is to
down and
build
take
them.
every class. That's the other challenge. It's like
Yeah.
if I could, and then I had some data. So we've been able to get some other data. So, yeah. Anyways, a couple more things, and then we're gonna head out. We've got live ride this Saturday and next Saturday. So this Saturday, the 14th, Matt is doing 7 a.m. and it's a 75-minute PZE. So no surprises there. PZE. You guys knew last week was not endurance, right? Surprise. Um, and then we'll do it on demand at 10 and 1. And these are all Eastern times. On the 21st, Matt has a 60-minute PZE at 8 and then on demand at 11 and 2. So jump in. Or if you have other times you want to ride, jump in and find some folks. Use the hashtag Team Wilpers Cycling and you can find your teammates on the leaderboard. Um, anything we need to chat with on the outdoor challenge, the
Nope. Kind of
cycling
building
challenge?
off of last week, same kind of structure, similar type workouts. Next week, I believe, is our recovery week, right? So we kind of got
Yeah.
pushed through this week, and then next week we get to pull back a little bit. So feel free to kind of push it. Again, don't push it on your hard, long
Mm-hmm.
ride on the weekend. Just those 80% blocks is it. Extend it in the zone twos. But other than that,
Yeah.
no, people are doing great. They're following along, and
Yeah.
I'm loving it.
Good. And you get to see a lot more of the compliance now that we're on Training Peaks. So that's
I
awesome.
do. I get to see
Yeah.
green boxes and yellow boxes and red boxes and
Good. We'll
all
talk
that
about
stuff.
that at some point in the next couple of weeks. Laura, my understanding is now they release them at noon Eastern time, which is 9 a.m. And so what I've done is I've scheduled a 3-hour break between the live class and the on-demand class. So yes, I saw a couple of people jumped on right before it was released. And there may be some flukes. I mean, we know once in a while there's production problem or, somebody does something weird in a class and they can't release it for some reason. So if it's not released, I would just say pull the same type of class that is scheduled. So a 75-minute power zone endurance or a 60-minute power zone endurance or whatever is on the schedule for that day. And you could use that as your substitute if for some reason it doesn't go on demand. But our goal with this was just to get you all riding together. We thought it would be fun and nice to have some scheduled times. And the feedback was really good. Everybody was like, wow, it was so cool to see so many Team Wilpers folks on the leaderboard. So having a targeted time, I think, is a nice aspect of this. So, yeah, it did work out. See, everything always works out. What is it? It all works out in the end. If it didn't work out, it's not the end. And on that note, I'm going to
It's
go
the
make my
end.
lunch and go to work. Yeah, thanks for joining us, everybody. Yeah, Brian, good to see you again. And keep riding, everybody.
All right, guys. Bye.